7th event in our Albion web series. We are so grateful to have you guys here. This has been a phenomenal platform to see people reconnecting, sharing memories, laughing together, and continuing to learn together. It's been so fun for me to get to be a part of this. So we're super excited for tonight. I think it'll be no exception. We've been planning the athletics web series since we thought of the web series, but the hardest part has been choosing who to feature, because there is such a wide pool of people with fantastic memories, fantastic stories of being an athlete at Albion, and so many people who have gone on to great careers in sports. And so this is really incredible to see people who are panelists and people from all over the place who are attending the event. Thank you so much for making time. We have people on this call who are trying to reopen NFL offices, who are trying to teach golf without courses being open, solving huge problems. We have someone whose birthday is today, and everybody wanted to celebrate with their Briton family. And I think that says so much about the kind of community that we have here at Albion. So I'm excited to relive some of our great sports moments and to talk about the impact of an Albion experience on a career in sports today. But a couple things about technology real quick. You are going to stay muted if you're not a panelist, but please engage with the chat. If you move your cursor at the bottom of the
left-hand corner, can you see something that says mute?
If you press chat at the bottom of your screen on the right side, you can type comments, memories from your time at Albion, and you can even ask questions. And we're going to do a Q&A at the end. I'll be tracking the whole time the questions that you ask in the chat. So with that, it's my honor to introduce Coach Turner, who's our MC for tonight. And most of you know and love Coach Turner. He is the longest serving coach at Albion, 34 years, 72 seasons. He did 34 basketball, 30 men's golf, 4 men's tennis, and 4 men's soccer. So I think for a lot of us, it's hard to picture Albion athletics without the Turners. So thank you so much for agreeing to host us tonight. And I'll hand it over to you, Coach Turner, and I'll unmute you. So you don't have to worry about it. There you go. Oh.
I'm still, there you go.
There you go.
Thank you, Hannah. You read that just the way I gave it to you yesterday, so that's perfect. Before we get started with the participants, I just want to say a little bit about what Hannah and her husband, AJ, who is a 2017 graduate of Albion, how they've been handling the pandemic. He is the dorm director at Wesley, so they have they've had a great apartment in Wesley during these last 8 or 10 weeks. As I talked to her the other day, she's ready for that to change. So she's ready to get back out again. But thank you, Hannah, for setting this up. This is really good. Let me introduce our first 2 participants tonight. We're going to start off with people who participated in athletics and had a significant event when they were at Albion from an athletic standpoint. The first 2 are going to be Duncan Beagle and Kirk Heinze, both from the class of 1970. They're going to describe the 1970 baseball victory over the Michigan State Spartans. We had a double header that day, and Michigan State was victorious in the first game, but we killed them the second game, right, Biggs? And we won the second game, and this is the 50th anniversary of that victory over Michigan State in baseball. Those 2 guys have remained great friends throughout this time. I don't know how, but I guess they don't have many other friends, so I guess it's good that they remain good friends. But Duncan is a district judge for Genesee County in Flint, Michigan, and has just been a phenomenal, or circuit judge, excuse me, done a phenomenal job, and has been a great supporter of Albion and Albion athletics throughout his time. And Kirk is a former retired professor from Michigan State. He also has a radio show, The Greening of the Great Lakes, that is on the radio. And the 2 of them have just been great great supporters of Albion College and our athletic program. Since you pitched the game that won that we beat Michigan State, Duncan, I'm going to have Kirk start first so that you can finish up with about your aspect of the game. So, Kirk, why don't you go first?
Hey, thanks, Mike. Always great to see you. I think the last time we were together is when the Britons won the MIAA basketball championship at Kresge.
Exactly, in Kresge, and as they say, historic Kresge Gymnasium.
Historic. Well, yeah, as you alluded to, Mike, next Tuesday will mark 50 years, the last time the Michigan State Spartans came to Albion. And those were tough times. We had a lot of anti-war protests going on. The first Earth Day was in April of 1970. A lot of us weren't sure what we were going to do after we graduated. We were dealing with the Army or the draft or what have you. So that afternoon when the Spartans came into town, it was a beautiful May afternoon. We could forget about all that other drama and focus on the Spartans. It was like Morley said, all I care about is I want to beat the damn Spartans. And Morley was 0-21 against Michigan State. He'd never beaten them. And we hadn't beat them since 1907. So Sparties came down. They were a good team that year. They were fighting fighting for the Big Ten championship with Minnesota and Ohio State. And, you know, we didn't know what to expect. We had a lot of people out. We started the first game. I think we had a few jitters in the first inning, a couple of hits, a couple of errors, and a walk. And they had 2 unearned runs, so it was 2-0 Spartans going into the bottom of the first inning. And that's the way the game ended, 2-0. We out-hit them 8-5, but we just couldn't get that big hit to get those runs in. And so, but we were feeling pretty good about ourselves. 2-0, 2 unearned runs. We knew we could play with the Sparties. And then we had Duncan Beagle go in the second game, and Duncan had been really hot. He'd had a couple of shutouts in a row. And so we were confident maybe we could get the Sparties. And Dunk, I'll let you take it from there.
Thank you, Kirk, and thank you, Hannah, and Mike Turner for organizing this. Yeah, Kirk set the stage for what it was like then. You know, we hadn't yet graduated. Kirk and I knew because of the lottery earlier in the year, we had a military obligation. And I think we realized this might be the last game we may ever play. So there was a little more incentive for me because there were 4 Spartans in the starting lineup that were from my hometown in Flint. And I'd either played with them or played against them. And I was not a hard thrower, but on that particular day, my normal fastball of about 75 miles an hour got up to probably maybe 80 to 85. And I think I realized, like Kirk said, we knew we could play with them after that first game. And what a great way to finish off the season. Got some timely hitting from some of our key players. Ron McGregor, our shortstop, was an All-American. Art Kale, our catcher, just caught a great game. And as Kirk said, Morley wanted to beat the damn Spartans. So it was just one of those games you'll never, ever forget. And it's a memory that I'll cherish forever, as will Kirk and the other seniors on that team.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Duncan and Kirk. And I don't know how many other people have heard Kirk talk about. There's some great pictures of those guys, Kale and Duncan and Kirk in the front row with Morley and Ron Gregorian and Dave Moeller in the back. But I don't know how many of you have all heard Kirk talk about and lament the fact that he just didn't get enough hitting and didn't get enough runs. I think he keeps telling me that he pitched a better game than Beagle, but Beagle got more hits and support and run support. But I've about had it with it, Kirk. So let's get over that. Beagle won the game, and we're really happy for Albion. And as Duncan started off saying earlier, or Kirk, one of you did such a good job. Morley celebrated so hard that Michigan State said, we're never coming back to that place. We had a couple of more home and home series with them, but they said, you're only coming to Michigan State. We're not going down there anymore. So you kind of screwed that thing up for us, guys. But other than that, it was great. Thank you again, both.
Well, here,
very
Mike,
much.
here's the great story, Mike. The Biggie Munn came out to practice. We found out years later, Biggie Munn came to the Spartan practice the next day, and he chewed out the Spartans. He said, 2 things Spartans don't do. You don't lose to Michigan, and you don't lose to a tiny school like Albion College.
Good point. Yeah, he got their attention, I'm sure. Again, thank you both very much. Next, we have Marianne Ignatov, who is Marianne Stokes Ignatov, who is from the class of 1976. Marianne was certainly a great athlete when she was at Albion. She participated in field hockey, she swam, and she also ran track when she was here. I remember Marianne mostly for her field hockey prowess. She didn't play field hockey her first couple years, but the coach Sharduff saw what a great athlete she was in participating in other sports. So she invited her to come out for the team, and she came out. She was a great athlete on the field hockey team. And Marianne's big job was to do just what Shar told her, get the ball to Penny Hannett, because Penny was the leading scorer in the region, and Marianne was the leading assist person in the region that year. And Sharduff was a great coach that said, get the ball to Penny Hannett, which Marianne did. And their senior year in field hockey, they beat both Notre Dame and the University of Michigan. So take that, Heinze, a little bit. They beat both Michigan and Notre Dame that year. Okay, Marianne, you've got a minute and a half. So let's hear about your experiences at Albion.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about 2 outstanding women coaches. They're just pioneer of women's athletics. And without them, I don't think I would have had the chance to be a 3-sport athlete. I'm going to talk a little bit about Joe Dunn and Shar Duff. Joe Dunn was at Albion College for 33 years, and she was called the mother of the women's MIAA. Her leadership led to the founding of the Women's League in 1941 that lasted past my graduation to 1978. And in that year, it was combined with the men's because the Title IX was implemented throughout the country. In 1956, Shar Duff came to Albion College and was a driving force in women's athletics for 34 years. She served on a lot of boards and NCAA committees. Shar coached tennis and field hockey during my time on campus. Mike, I did play hockey for 4 years. I didn't get any good until my last 2 years, but
Dave must not have watched you those first 2 years, because he told me you didn't go out till you were a junior.
Shar was the head of the physical education department and my advisor. So when I went in there to pick classes, she thought as a soccer player, I could be a field hockey player. She told me that the sports were similar, and I was very naive and clueless, because the sports have little in common, except they both have 11 players on the field. I spent the first year trying to use my feet instead of my stick. Shar taught fundamentals and teamwork to build successful teams. Most of the women on the team had never played field hockey before. In fact, they didn't even know the sport existed. So Shar had her work cut out for her every year. And as Mike said, we did beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame. We played on AstroTurf. That's something we had never done before, which is a lot faster than that long grass that was down by the river. And we beat the University of Michigan at home. That was an exciting game, a very rough game. In fact, that was the only time I was ever knocked out. I was knocked unconscious. Back then we didn't have concussions. We just had bells rung. And if you get knocked out or got taken out of the game, you could not get back in the game. So Shar came on the field, and I remember coming to, and she said, "Can you play? We got a minute and a half." And I said, "Oh yeah, Shar, I'm fine." So I staggered for a minute and a half, and I got back in the second half, and we played, and we were able to beat Michigan. But I think Shar is one of Albion's great coaches, not because of her many wins, her numerous MIAA championships, but it's her dedication and kindness. I've always looked back at my 4 years at Albion College as life-changing. Shar Duff mentored me to be a coach and the person I am today. I am forever grateful for her example of what a coach and educator can be. I've been coaching for 45 years. Hard to believe it's been that long, but 45 years, and I'm still trying to make Shar Duff proud. So go Brits, and it's been, I'm really fortunate to have two, you know, wonderful women. Yeah, those are some pictures of me coaching Albion College. I was on the Albion College swimming staff for 11 years.
Well, thank you, Marianne. And you're right about Shar and Joe Dunn and what great mentoring they did for you. But it sure rubbed off because you've been a tremendous coach those 45 years that you talked about. Marianne, after graduation, she was teaching in a couple of different schools and then came back to Albion. She coached the women's swim team and sometimes also coached the men's swim team at the Albion High School. She's won a state championship. Marianne, help me. Is it just one or more than one?
One state title, two
Okay,
runner-ups.
and lots of individuals that won state titles. Her daughters were tremendous swimmers, but she coached, but also mentored many, many, many young women who grew up in Albion, including my two daughters, and just did a tremendous job of that. And thank you very much for it, Marianne. And because of that, we're going to sing happy birthday for you since it's your birthday. Hannah, you go ahead and start.
Happy birthday to you.
You got it, Hannah.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Marianne. Happy birthday to you.
Perfect.
you.
Couldn't be better. I'm not sure Hannah was ready for that, but that was great, Hannah.
Not
Thank you.
Neither were we.
Very good. Well, I forgot everybody was muted but Hannah, so we're all set. The next participant is Kyle Klein from the class of 1997. Kyle played high school football in Frankfurt. His dad was his coach, Tim, and then his brother Derek also played on that team. He was the quarterback of the national championship team at Albion College in 1994 when we won the national championship, the only team national championship in Albion College history. Kyle in high school, when he was a sophomore, they won the state title. When they were a junior, they won the state title. And then he played more of a role when they were a senior, and they were runner-up as a senior, I think. But then he came to Albion, and as a sophomore, worked his way into the lineup for Coach Pete Schmidt and was the starting quarterback on our team that won the national championship. Kyle, why don't you tell us a little bit about that experience being on the national championship and playing for Pete? You got to unmute him. Atta girl. Thank you. Yep.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been fortunate enough to be asked to do a lot of things on behalf of the 94 team. And quite honestly, there were a lot of players who were a lot better than I was certainly that year. Being a sophomore, I think I played 3 plays as a freshman. So I had no experience whatsoever coming into that season. But, that season it was a special season for us. There was very little expected from us. The seniors that graduated from the 93 team, it was probably one of the best senior classes that had gone through. Mike Montico started every game as a quarterback. Ron Dawson started every game at center. Several other seniors that played, 3 or 4 years. And they were all gone. So we were going to be a young team. There wasn't a lot expected of us. And it kind of helped us because we really didn't have any expectation. We didn't have, really any plan other than to try to win the MIAA. And we beat a very good Alma team at Alma in the 8th week of the season, pretty much guaranteed we were going to go to the playoffs. But just the way that team was, as young as we were, we really didn't have any expectation even going into the playoffs. We had hoped to win a game in the playoffs, which we did. The second game was Mount Union, which was probably my favorite game in college. Mount Union had beaten us the year before and went on to win the national championship. The game was just back and forth, lots of offense. We happened to win because we blocked 2 extra points, which is just an absurd thing to happen. The next week we get to go to St. John's in Minnesota. The NCAA charters a plane for us. It was the first time a lot of people on our team had been on a plane. So we got on the plane in Lansing, and as it took off, there was just a roar that went up as several people had some apprehension of, they didn't know what it felt like to take off on a plane. So everybody cheered and we're happy, but that's just kind of the way that it was. We got back that night after the semis. We win the game, we get back. Most of our friends were still traveling back because, of course, they had to drive. So a lot of people met the bus when we got back. There was a celebration. And then we just stayed up. There were an awful lot of us that were either ATOs or Sigma News that were on the team. And kind of between the two houses on campus, it was really just a huge party. And I think we stayed up until all our friends got back, driving from Minnesota. And then really the same thing happened the following week. It was the week before finals. I remember being in the ATO house, and there was absolutely no chance that any of us were going to be studying that week. We were just so excited, and didn't matter what room you went into, somebody was on the team and talking about the game. But really the things you remember are the things that weren't the game, or the games. Being in the locker room, just a tremendous senior class that we had that year with Todd Morris and Jeff Robinson, who's, if we've had a better running back other than Dave Ignatov, if we've had a better running back at Albion College, I don't know. But just so many good players, so many good people. In fact, I'm a part of a group that plays golf every spring. Last weekend was supposed to be our golf weekend. There's 18 of us who are all ATOs and teammates, and last weekend was supposed to be our weekend. We've had to postpone it till late June. But really my closest friends are people that I was on the team with, and that's the stuff that you remember. We had Pete Schmidt as a coach, who was just absolutely tremendous. The things that he taught us, life's lessons, just really, stayed with all of us, every day. There's not a day that goes by that we don't think of him. But it was just so much fun. Michigan and Michigan State really didn't have great seasons that year. So during our playoff run, we were kind of the big thing around the media from Detroit, Lansing, Kalamazoo. We had television and newspaper reporters at every day at practice. It was kind of just a little slice of as if we were playing big time college football at Albion College. So it was just really a fun season. But that month of the playoffs was just a whirlwind and something we'll never forget. Obviously, when I got on this call today, I don't know who it was, but they said, "Oh, I remember watching that game," and whether it's an Albion event or in my hometown, there's so many people that in a conversation, it's, "Oh, you're Kyle Klein. I remember watching that game on ESPN," or, "Oh, you played on that team. I watched that game on ESPN. I'll never forget it." So just a really special thing to be able to do. Something none of us, our Albion experience would have been tremendous without it. But being able to have that just made it even that much more special.
Well, great. Thank you, Kyle. And I remember that day we were the basketball team. We were playing at Wabash College in Crawfordsville, Indiana, in a tournament. And it was Saturday afternoon. Somehow we got lucky and won the Friday night game. We were playing Wabash in the finals, and senior Brian Jameson made a goofy little play that he set up. And at the buzzer, we won. Everybody just grabbed their warm-ups at the bench, ran across the street over into their commons area. And because we told them before to have the game on TV, we got to watch about the last 8 or 10 minutes of the game, and the Wabash guys weren't as excited as our guys were to watch you guys win the game, and that was really a great thrill for all the Britons to be able to do that. And thank you very much. And when you talked about Jeff Robinson being a great running back, he certainly was. And you mentioned Dave Ignatov is another one, but the difference is Dave was the second best athlete in his family, where Jeff is certainly the best athlete in his family. So it's all's going good with those folks. Our last individual to talk about a special event that he participated in while he was at Albion is a rising senior, a senior to be this year at Albion College, Caden Ebeling. At 6'7", Caden, each as his last 2 years, as a sophomore and as a junior, was awarded first team all MIAA honors in basketball. Had two just great years for us. And then this next year, we're expecting big things for him. And then his parents, both of his parents, Jenny and Tom, went to Albion and are Albion College graduates. And matter of fact, his dad Tom played for me and was a very good player in the early 90s. Caden, if you can just tell us a little bit about your experience this year of playing at the Breslin Center and going up against Michigan State and a bunch of future pros. Are you there, Caden?
Yeah, for me, that was obviously probably one of my coolest experiences at Albion, because ever since I was little, I've been a Michigan State fan, and just like getting to watch them on TV, like when they made all their championship runs and all their Final Four runs, like that was always like the place I wanted to play at when I was older. So I'd go out in like the backyard, like pretend like I was in the Breslin Center, like trying to like recreate shots that I've seen like from there, and then finally getting to like get that dream like play there was probably like one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had. And just like you see these guys and you know that they're big, like when you step on the court next to them, you can just see how big like these guys actually are. Like me being 6'7", like Tillman felt like he was like 6'10", you know, he's listed like 6'8". He just, all of them are so much physically like bigger than like all of us at the Division III level. And then you have Bingham, who's like 7'1". Like I have a picture where I'm like jumping as high as I can off the ground. He's not even off the ground. He's like the same height as me, just with his hands up. So just some like crazy freak athletes that they have there. But overall, I think the one thing I remember from the game the most was after 10 minutes into the game, even though we lost the game, we were down, I think, 18-20 with 10 minutes left to go in the first half. And I think it kind of shocked some people because they thought we were going to get blown out right away. We kind of hung in there for a while. I think we were down 15 at halftime. Obviously, the lead kind of grew in the second half where they kind of tired us out a little bit. But it was just a really fun experience for me. And, like, I've never played in front of – I mean, Hope's probably the most people I've ever played in front of, which was 2,000, 3,000 people. And then you have here where we played in front of almost 1,000 people. And just the atmosphere and how noisy it was there is obviously something I'm never going to forget, and definitely something I'll be able to take my Albion experience that most other schools can never say that they've done too.
Well, great, Caden. You're right. There were a lot of Albion people. We were there, obviously, and we saw a lot of purple around that Breslin Center, and that had to be exciting for you guys as players, to look up and see all the Albion people that were there. I made the comment that I think a lot of people wearing purple in the stands that night hadn't been to an Albion College game since they graduated, but they were sure out in support at that game, and it was really good. I don't know if anybody else has noticed, Caden, but somehow you have a sign placed over your head that's pretty well placed. I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but a year ago, attaboy, Caden. A year ago, Caden helped lead the team to the league championship, the MIAA championship in the tournament. And then this past year, the Britons won the MIAA league championship. And both Caden and James L. Davis were first team all league players both of those 2 years, and are both going to be back to lead the Britons this year along for another very exciting season. Caden, there's one thing that kind of surprised me a little bit. You forgot to mention what you got as a grade point average this year. this last semester. I'll do it for you though, because I know how humble you are all the time. Caden got another 4-point, and I emphasize the word another 4-point. He's done a great job at Albion, and looking forward to another stellar year for you, both academically and basketball wise next year. Thank you, Caden, for doing that. Lots of people are clapping in there, Caden, and I don't think it's necessarily for basketball. I think it's a lot for that 4-point.
Thank you, Coach.
You bet. Next, we're going to hear from 4 alums who not really, maybe didn't have a specific event, a specific game that like we just heard from 4 other people, but they're gonna talk about their careers after they've been in athletics after they graduated from Albion. The first 2 people that we're going to hear are very good friends of the Turners and very, very good friends of Albion College. Ced and June Dempsey are both 1954 graduates of Albion. The Dempseys are a true Albion couple. Both were athletes when they were at Albion, and then after graduation, Ced was an assistant basketball coach. He was the head basketball coach for 3 years. He was the dean of students. I think he was a janitor in 1 or 2 buildings too at some time. But Ced really did everything when he was at Albion College. At that same time, June taught elementary school at Dalrymple School, and they both were athletes when they were at Albion. June played 3 sports, and Ced participated in 3 sports. June, I say played quite well, and Ced participated, but he was probably better known for his position at the NCAA as the executive director president for 8 years than he was for his 3 years of coaching basketball at Albion College. Before taking over that position at the NCAA, Ced was the athletic director at 4 different NCAA Division I universities throughout the country. He started at University of Pacific. He was at San Diego State. He was at Houston, and then he finished his athletic directorship career at the University of Arizona in Tucson. And June was very involved. She was a professor when he was doing his athletic directorships. And while he was doing that, he earned the reputation as the architect of excellence. And there's certainly a good reason for that. He did a tremendous job as athletic director in higher education. And then he went on, as I say, to be the executive director and the president of the NCAA. I would like the 2 of you to talk about how Albion prepared you for such tremendous careers in higher education and athletics after you graduated from Albion.
We each get 2 minutes.
I'll start. I came to Albion because I had had a wonderful athletic experience at Redford High School in Detroit. The women's programs, they were called girls programs at that time, were equal to the men's. We traveled the same way the men did. We had our banquets, we had our letter sweaters, we had our awards, and the city of Detroit led the way as far as equality of athletic opportunities for women. So when my dad took me to Albion to visit, I met with Joe Dunn, and I just would support everything Marianne said. And Joe Dunn assured me that there would be equal opportunities for women at Albion, and there were. I'm very disappointed in you, Mike, that you did not recall that the Albion women 67 years ago this year beat Michigan at Michigan in field hockey. We made the trip on a school bus and got there and found that the Michigan field hockey players were all lined up, sort of ready to treat us as the little sisters from the poor. And we rallied behind our leadership, our coach, and we beat the pants off of them. And so, Mike, I don't want you to forget that.
Well, I was out of town that weekend.
I'm
so
sure you
I
were.
missed that one.
I think probably you were still in the nursery, I'm not sure. But in any event, the disappointing thing for me was I came to Albion with a plan to be a coach. And I happened to meet this tall hook shot shooter with the great looking legs and body, and decided he was for me. And at that time, our goal was to probably end up at Teconcha or Cement City, Michigan, and we were going to be coaches together. But then I learned about nepotism in the state of Michigan. And if I was in coaching, I would not be able to work in the same high school as my husband, because undoubtedly he would be my boss, or at least think he was. And so I did switch my career a little bit and went into elementary education. And the leadership opportunities I had at Albion really led me to eventually become the dean of the College of Extended Education at the University of Arizona. And I felt like the opportunities at Albion for leadership in the Women's Athletic Association and in sorority opportunities really prepared me for what it means to be a good leader. And I won't go into that. There are a lot of books read about that. The other thing I'd like to say that really impressed me and all of our friends was the relationship with faculty at Albion. The faculty became not just our mentors, but also our friends. I remember going to basketball games with Daryl Pollard, who was my Russian history professor. I used to babysit for them, and then they would have us over for dinner. And of course, the Isaacs became our lifelong friends. But I think one of the telling stories about Albion is at our 50th reunion, which Seth and I chaired with the Brundages as co-chairs, and Ruth and Bill Biggs, who are names from Albion as well. When we had that reunion, now, mind you, we were all pretty close to the late 60s in age, and two of our former professors, Anthony Taft's English professor and professor of music, and Howie Pedersen, showed up at our 50-year reunion. They were going on 90 years of age, but they came out to support us, and we considered them our friends. And I think that's a lifelong kind of thing at Albion that you don't get at most of the larger schools. One other thing I would say about Jo Dunn to emphasize her leadership. When I was in the Women's Athletic Association my junior year, Jo Dunn said, we need to have Albion represented nationally. So the Women's Athletic Association was meeting at Stanford University. And I was chosen to make the trip to Stanford to represent Albion. And Jo gave me the challenge to take to that group that we need to have a national organization that was moving more toward recognition of women in women's sports and the achievements of women nationally. So I didn't even know where Stanford University was, and I got on my first airplane trip. This is 1953. In those days, you stopped to have lunch because they didn't serve lunch on the planes. And we stopped in Denver and had to get off and have our meal and then get back on the plane. Well, those of you who've flown out of Denver, you know what that's like, and especially on a prop plane back in 1953. And I promptly lost that lunch all over the airplane, but got to Stanford, and I took Joe Dunn's message. And I don't think Joe Dunn has ever received the kind of recognition she should have for her leadership. She was really a pioneer toward Title IX, only she didn't coin that phrase. So all in all, I think my experiences in Albion could be wrapped up in a great deal of success, but probably the best one is the guy next to me. You know, I didn't go to get a husband, but that was just a side effect.
Well, she points to me. I must say that the first time I tried to date June, my whole freshman year, I was working and playing and doing all of that stuff, trying to get acclimatized to college. But second year, I decided that I was going to start dating. And so I made a list of 10 gals that I thought looked good possible dates. And,
it's a good idea for you, Caden. Give that a shot.
So I called June to see if she was available on Friday night. No, I'm not available on Friday night. And I said, well, what about Saturday night? No, not got a date on for Saturday night. Sunday night? No, I'm not available. So I started to hang up. She says, but I'm free the next Friday. And so that's the start of our dating process. And I never told her where she ranked in that top 10 of women. But anyway, we've had a great 68 years together. My first exposure to Albion was my senior year in basketball at Wayne High School. And we were in the quarterfinals to go to the state. And the playoff in the quarterfinals was at Kresge Gym. And I'd never been in that part of the country or on that campus. And so I did have an opportunity then to meet Walter Sprandl. You've seen that name around campus, I would assume, but Walt was probably one of those icons like Mike Turner, who was there forever and had tremendous amount of influence upon a number of people. Walt used to tell me, if you can have an influence upon 5 people while you're on this planet, you will have accomplished something. And when he died, there were about 45, 50 of us that came back to his services, and everyone said he was the most important person that he had ever been experienced with, and particularly at Albion. So Walt was a second father to me. He was guided my career all the way from the time we were in school. And he and Ike Isaac. Ike was my coach the last 2 years in basketball, and with all of his enthusiasm and excitement, that he brought a different dimension. But Ike sort of became a big brother to me as we went through our careers together. But the people at Albion had a tremendous amount of influence upon how I developed, and what sport was looked upon as somewhat a laboratory life. The kind of experiences that you have in athletics are similar to what we have in our everyday experiences. Now, I'll mention a couple of those things with you. One was my growing understanding of the problem with minority representation. And Albion, at that time, we had 4 African-American playing on our basketball team. We were the only conference or school with minorities. Adrian came in shortly after that, about my senior year. And my senior year, Adrian recruited a young man named Henry Hughes, and Henry Hughes was probably one of the best early athletes in the MIAA. He's about 6 foot 5'6", and I had the chore of guarding him. And he during my senior year at Crestview, he had 3 charging fouls. And on the 4th, that was when there were 4 fouls in a game. On the 4th one, he charged into me again, and we were shooting free throws at the opposite end that time. And the official walked along with me, had the ball in his hand to give to me to shoot free throw at the other end. He says, "Well, we finally got that black bastard out of there, didn't we?" And I just stopped. I couldn't believe what I had heard, and also I was feeling so accomplished by shutting down Henry and having a good contest with him to feel that the official was not being fair in that sense because of his color. I got about to mid-court and I stopped and I called timeout. And I went over and talked to Ike, and I said, "Ike, I don't feel like shooting these free throws." Well, the upshot of that, the guy never worked another game in the MIAA, and the experiences. And I had an opportunity one time to tell Henry I was really sorry about that experience, but where else can you find that kind of thing in a more enjoyable kind of environment than playing sports? How you learn to deal with people. We had a man named Arnold Pinckney who was black, and he played left field, and we went down and played Eastern Kentucky on our spring trip, and every student at Eastern lined up in the left field line and rode him the whole ball game. Unfortunately, he went 5 for 5 at the plate. It was a great experience for him to deal with. But I think out of that, I grew a tremendous awareness of what sport really can be. And it's an educational experience as much as it is the physical aspect of it. And as I went through life in coaching and in administration and NCAA, I always had that in the back of my mind. Henry Hughes getting kicked out of a game basically because he was not the right color. So the minority representation as such was a learning factor in that. And the other thing I would share with you is how I kind of got to where I ended up. We got married our senior year, and when we were graduated, I was offered a head basketball job at Wall Lake High School. Boy, I thought that was Class A school at that time. It was a great opportunity, and I went bouncing into Walt's office, telling him about the opportunity, and he said, "Well, you know, that's really nice that they recognize your abilities." He said, "But you're not going to take that job." And I took back, and he said, "You're going to stay here and you're going to get your master's degree, and you'll have an opportunity to coach here. And at the end of 2 years, there may be some other opportunities, or you can go back to Wall Lake High School." So that's what I did. And at the end of the second year, I get offered the head job at Adrian College to be the basketball coach. And I again go bouncing into his office, and June was pregnant by that time, and we had our first one on the way, and we were getting where we needed some money. So I told Walt that Adrian had offered me the job, and he said, "You know, that's really a nice opportunity for you, but you're not going to take that job." And he said, "You know, you're going to go on and get your PhD, and you know that Wall Lake High School job, it could still be there, and Adrian would be there, and maybe there'll be other opportunities for you." And so I ended up going to the University of Illinois to work on my PhD. I wasn't the smartest guy in the class, and I had to take courses that I never had at Albion, and I had very little science background at Albion. I had a great philosophical background, but I had to take exercise physiology and all those courses in with medical students. And so every time I'd get down, and I had to learn French and German and read and all that stuff. And so I would couldn't, I'd call Walt once in a while or write him a letter. We didn't have emails back in those days. Wrote him a letter and he helped me back up. And he's the one that kept air underneath me as I went through my career. And little did I know, some of those opportunities did come along, and I'm very fortunate and moving to it. And my administrative experiences were very exciting, very, very challenging. And as I look at the NCAA today, I'm glad I'm sitting here by the ocean in La Jolla. But I will never forget my experiences at Albion, and they've always been really the background of my life. It was at Albion, and June and I are planning to leave much of our state, whatever it is, to the school to help them and continue to grow. And I'm really excited to see what they're doing in time, bringing back the city, because the city was a very vibrant place when we were there. And I think that's a wonderful challenge for college. I'll stop there. I probably went longer than I should have, Mike. But
well, thank you both very much. It was great. Those were some really good words. Just a little known fact about Ced and about the University of Arizona. Ced was the third athletic director at the University of Arizona, and he was from Albion, obviously. And the first athletic director at the University of Arizona was a guy named Pops McHale, and Pops is an Albion College graduate. And now they have their seventh athletic director, and his name is David Hickey, who played baseball at Albion, as an Albion College graduate. I think, Ced, is this about Dave's third year? This is his third year, and I think most of you may have seen an article that the college put out. A very nice article in Tucson paper this week on the job that Dave is doing. I was fortunate to be part of the selection process and hiring him, and people thought I was biased because he was from Albion, but he's doing a great job. Well, I tell that story to people. There aren't very many people that think there are very many Division III schools that have three former athletes being athletic directors at their major university. But again, thank you both, June and Ced. And again, you're both great friends of the Turners and Albion College. Mike, information, that's 3 out of 7. Right, 3 out of 7. That's right. That's pretty neat.
So look around you, Mike, because number 4 may be right around you somewhere.
That's exactly right. And I forgot to say, the reason I went to the University of Arizona for graduate school is because of Cedric Dempsey. So thank you very much for hitting me up and letting me get a graduate assistantship there. Next, we're going to now talk to Craig Kirby. Craig came to Albion in the early 1980s from Dayton, Ohio. Craig was a member of Gerstacker and was very interested in politics when he was a student. And then after graduation, he was the president of the Student Senate on campus. This interest led Craig to a career in politics, as he interned for Senator Gary Hart at one time. He also worked with the Reverend Jesse Jackson on his campaign. And then he also worked in the Clinton White House, had an office in the West Wing. I saw a movie about the West Wing once, Craig, but I didn't see your picture in there. But that's very impressive, that the career that you've had in politics. And then after 25 years of public service, Craig decided to get into and organize a nonprofit. The name of the nonprofit is called golf.myfuture.mygame, which introduces young people of color to the great game of golf. And Craig is going to tell us about how this project is started and how it's taken off for you. Go ahead, Craig. Thank you.
Well, Coach, it's great seeing you. As I said earlier, you look fantastic. Hannah, it's great seeing you again. I was fortunate. I played football for 2 years at Albion. I came in the fall of '81. And Marianne, your husband had a lot to do with my success sport as it was. I came in, from Dayton thinking I was a great football player. And they put up, Kirk, you'll understand, Kyle, you'll understand this. They put up the traveling list. And so I went, and I didn't see my name on that list. And so I went to Coach Ignatov, and I said, Coach, my name's not on the list. He goes, I know. And I said, okay, well, how do I get my name on that list? He looked at me, and he said 2 words. He said, get better. That was it. And so I took that and I got better, or at least good enough to make the traveling team my freshman year and my sophomore year, and had a great time. We did not win a national championship. We won maybe 4 games. But it was also my sophomore year where I was sitting in the Del Sig house, and 3 friends came down and they said, hey, Kirby, we're going to go play a round of golf. Would you like to join us? And I looked at them, and I had never played golf in my entire life, had never even been on a golf course. But I was just too embarrassed to tell them that I had never played. So I said, sure, let's go. So we go to the course, and of course they say, well, you're up. And I'm like, no, I can't go first. I have to let the generals go. So they went, and I was a little bit of an athlete. So I watched what they did, and I had a great game. I played well enough, Coach, where I was able to come back the next week. And that was where I got my start with golf. And then after I got out of politics, I thought about golf, and I thought about, golf is a sport that can bridge the gap between global citizens at the top and the left behinds at the bottom. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start this foundation. And we provide underrepresented children with a passport to the world of business via the sport of golf. So we pique their interest, we create a connection to the game through their lens, and we share with them the opportunities that this $85 billion a year industry has. And so we're very fortunate. I started this back in 2008, very quietly, but our commitment, our mission, and our passion and our purpose is to level the playing field, is to share with kids that golf is more than a game. Golf is a lifetime experience with unparalleled possibilities. And so we're able to bring possibilities to kids who never thought they would have them. We're in the Washington, D.C. area here where I live. We're in Baltimore, Maryland, Annapolis, Maryland, Columbus, Georgia, my hometown of Dayton, Ohio. We're about to go into Minneapolis, Minnesota. We've got some things to work out there. And of course, we are in my birth town of Detroit, Michigan, where we do a great deal of work with the Detroit Housing Commission. And this year, we were able to be selected as one of the charities for the Rocket Mortgage Classic, a PGA golf tournament that's going to be coming up in July. So that's a little bit of what I do each and every day.
Well, that sure sounds good. You're bridging a gap, as you talked about. I've seen you play golf. You've come a long ways from that first day at Tomac Woods in Albion. But I think the youth of America and the youth that you're dealing with are certainly going to be enhanced because of their experiences with your foundation. And again, thank you for what you do, and thank you for being a supportive person of Albion College also.
Thank you.
And our last participant tonight is Lara Juras from the class of 1991. Lara was an economics and communications major at Albion, and she started her career as a CPA. And then her first venture into the sports world was with the Detroit Tigers. That was her first job. Then she went with the Atlanta Braves, and she was there for about 13 or 14 years with Atlanta. And her last position with the Atlanta Braves was the Senior Vice President of Human Relations. And then in about a year and a half ago, she went, she got an invitation, and she changed positions again, and she became the vice president of people and culture for the Minnesota Vikings. Laura is, now it's your turn to tell us about your experiences in the football world as a Albion College graduate. And the baseball world, I guess, with Atlanta.
I was just gonna say, and I'm honored to be a part of this panel and the only non-true athlete, unless you count dance class with Missy Wist, which I did. So I walked the line, but as I told people, when I talk about my Albion experience, going back to what was there, I grew up in Marshall, Michigan. So a lot of I heard the Schuler reference earlier tonight. But that aspect, Albion was introduced to me when I was in high school, and I went to leadership forums there. And as I was just listening to everyone, I'm so inspired even by the stories that I hear now. I mean, June, like, your stories are amazing. And I really feel like that's what prepared me. I mean, my story I told Hannah the other night, which probably will bring a smile to a lot of people's faces, is because of Scotty Craycraft and Craycraft Christian Charity. I was able to, graduate with my economics, and he introduced me to the world of public accounting. So my foray into sports was from another Albion alum, Steve Quinn, who had also worked at Coopers and Lybrand with me and went to work for the Detroit Tigers. So now at my third professional sports team, which is crazy, I've opened 2 stadiums. And, moved into a different sport, football, which has been really interesting. And so this is my background, this is my office. But I think that the aspect about Albion is exactly what's going on right here. I mean, even before this all started, just seeing everyone talking about their relationships. From the beginning, I had the pleasure of having President Balgamore when I was in high school participate in things. And someone earlier had talked about, right, I think it was Marianne, right, the relationship with the professors. There was never a line with coaches or professors or administrators, and you felt like your opinion counted, and that aspect of being relevant and making an impact was always out there. My sorority experience, I was a resident assistant. There was a lot of opportunities, and I tell people all the time, the liberal arts background prepares you for that ability to make relationships with anybody, anywhere. And I think that that's been something that's been a hallmark for me personally, and why I chose to go into human resources. And the sports world, and I know I'm looking at the time, I know we're a little over, Hannah, I'm sorry. The sports world is built on relationships, and Albion has fostered that from the very beginning, and obviously as evidenced by everyone here tonight, it continues, and it's a great network to work with people. So Craig, nice to meet you virtually, and when you come to Minneapolis, let me know how I can help you. I know a few people in sports here. But all of these types of things are, just foundationally, they started in Albion, where you can do a little of everything. You can learn about everything, and your professional curiosity will take you where you need to go.
That's great, and don't worry about the time. We're certainly happy to have you back in the Midwest, and glad that with the Minnesota Vikings, you're back wearing purple and gold. So all those outfits you had in college, you can get back to again. You don't need that Atlanta Braves red anymore. So it's great. It's great to have you with us, Lara, and I really appreciate your time with us. Before I turn it back over to Hannah, I just want to say what a fun time it's been working with the college and this project and some other projects that we've done. One of the things that we've been working on for a couple of years now are 2 aspects of the Joe and Julie Sarah Wellness and Athletic Performance Center. The Wellness Center is moving along, and the work had a stoppage because of the virus, but it's back on operation now. They're working and going to have that completed. If you do not know about the project and want to get involved in it, we would love to have you get a hold of Eric Braun from the development office. He will certainly be happy to to talk to any of you about that project. Okay, Hannah, it's your turn to take over.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, if you guys have questions for our panelists, we'll make time for a few. This is kind of an extended edition. Usually our calls are 30 minutes, but we also usually have 1 or 2 panelists. So grateful for everything that the panelists shared. This is truly important information, and I'm excited Elizabeth Palmer, our archivist, is planning to add this to our archives as well. So this will be recorded for years to come of all of these great contributions to sports. So one announcement before we start Q&A, because we'll just kind of leave that open-ended, is that our next web series is 2 weeks from today on June 3rd, and we're going to be celebrating President Ditzler. So President Ditzler, as many of you know, is in his last month as the official president of Albion College, and he will be on the call. He will share his reflections in his final month in office, as well as we get the chance to celebrate him. And one opportunity before that call to celebrate him, tomorrow we're actually doing a parade by his house in cars, obviously, not a full-out parade. And if you're close enough, feel free to join. If not, you can actually leave him a note, and I will drop that link into the chat in a second here, so that you can see either more information about the parade, or you can see how to leave a note for him. We want to make sure that he feels celebrated. We can't do everything that we would have planned to in person, but we can certainly show him our appreciation. Anybody who knows Maury knows he is so engaging, so kind, so compassionate, and has brought so much purpose to Albion College in the last 6 years. So go ahead and check out that link. And I've only seen one question pop up so far. So thank you for everybody for being on the call. Feel free to leave as you want to. Feel free to ask questions as you want to. The only question I've seen so far is for Craig, and it's from Lisa Addis. She wanted to know how she can donate.
Oh, great. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you. Now, if you go to our website, www.golfmyfuturemygame.org, and just click on the donate button, and bam, we will take the resources to help our kids. And you know what? One other thing. So yesterday was the first coach, and you'll appreciate this. We got one of our first kids there a 4 full-year scholarship to Livingstone College, which is in Salisbury, North Carolina. So he's going on a golf scholarship, and he's one of our kids who's been with us for about 5 years. So I was just so happy yesterday.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Hannah, can I have a couple minutes, please?
Sure.
Okay, Al Cassier, graduate of 1970, but just want to make a connection with, and as I mentioned when I was chatting with Kyle, we had our 50th reunion of our 69 undefeated football team, but the more important part of that in relationship to Albion College, we were, a number of us were very close to Tom Taylor during that era, and he probably kept a lot of us in school just because of his very quiet personality. And the joke among the guys at the reunion was the look. He never yelled, but when the look came, that was it. But I had the privilege, because he was also our wrestling coach, even though he never coached wrestling. But I became very close with he and Dorothy. It actually would babysit for the kids. And then after he left, they'd move it up to the UP, which for them was heaven. But in this process of putting this reunion together, and Marianne's husband, Dave, was a huge part of this whole situation, because he knows everybody too. So it was, but in the process of talking with Dorothy, and she lives in Marquette, but the kids, two of the kids live in Traverse City. So Dorothy would not come down. She just was comfortable up there. But in the process of this, we got a hold of Tom Jr. and I'm trying to think. Oh, Kathy, the oldest daughter. I think there were 5 girls in this family, I believe. Well, anyway, they both came down to the reunion. We had our first initial gathering was just at random at the brew house in Albion. And when Tom and Kathy came in, Tom had his dad's Albion letter jacket on. And that was just, it was just like unbelievable. But that was the highlight of that whole weekend. It was just that whole experience of the Albion experience. So thanks.
Thanks,
sharing,
Al. That's nice, Al. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And as you mentioned, Tom, I've said this story many times. He clearly is one of the top 5 athletes I think that have ever been at Albion. He was a dominant football player when he was here.
Yeah. Yes, good man.
Yeah, any other questions or memories to share from people?
Hannah, you were great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I was great. You carried the team on your back. You did all the hard stuff. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This has been, yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as me. I am always impressed by the way that people talk about their coaches at Albion, how they talk about their faculty, and by the way that they show up for each other. So this has been remarkable to see people wanting to spend this long. So thank you so much. Oh, thanks, Lara.
I'll just end it by everybody staying healthy and being safe. Please, please be healthy and be safe.
For sure. For sure. Great. Well, seeing no further questions, have a great night, and thank you so much for attending the web series.
Thank you.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.